Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Tragedy into Triumph podcast, where we believe that tragedy never defines us. Triumph in God is the thing that can define our life, give us purpose, and ensure that this life on earth is lived to the best of our ability. I am so glad today to be joined by a great friend of mine, a guy that I have known for a lot of years. For everybody that's been a part of Tragedy into Triumph through the years, he's actually a guy that's actually helped us and participated in mission with us, even behind the scenes in planning and in prayer and in resourcing. And so we are honored today to have my good friend with us, Curtis Christopher. Curtis, how are you today, man?
I'm good. Thanks, man.
Good.
It's been good hanging out, just catching up. Yep.
It is. And the truth is we've got to hang out today in a way we haven't been able to in a long time. So
Yep.
Excited for that opportunity. Curtis, you and I've been through some fires together. We've had some struggles together.
We have.
We've even believed God together for some things
Yes.
through the years.
Yeah.
And I know that you have a particular story that our audience, probably some of them have heard, but not everybody.
Sure.
And so to our broader audience, I really want them to understand what God has done and is doing in your life. And so you and your first wife, you were a part of my church.
Yep.
You and I met at a college that you were on staff at and that I went to a long time ago.
Years ago.
A long time ago. and share a love for basketball and all
Yep.
those things and sports in general. And maybe cars. That's a side one.
Yes, it is.
But you and your wife are coming to my church in Circleville, and your great family. And by all practical purposes, you walk through the door, the Christophers walk through the door, and everybody goes, "This is the all-American couple. This is the perfect couple." Right?
Yeah.
But what's on the surface isn't truly the way things are underneath, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so walk us through a little bit. If you glanced at the Christophers, what was your perception of them? But then really, what really was happening under the surface? Walk us through a little bit of that.
Well, I'll never forget the day that you actually called me in and said, "Hey, I've got a ministry for you, and you need to do it." You that's the kind of pastor you were. Is that you saw a need and you saw a person. You're like, "You're a good fit. You need to be doing this." And it was awful for me to look you in the face and say, I can't do it. And you said, "Why?" And I said, "Wendell, my home front's not good. It's falling apart." And I remember you and I just cried together, and I told you for the first time that what you see on the outside is not what's on the inside behind closed doors, and began to unravel and unfold all that was happening in our home and how our marriage was falling apart. And I'll never forget, because we're good friends, and I'm thinking to myself, he's got to know. But in the end, you didn't know.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget in that moment, you actually got mad at me and said, "How have you been living two lives in my church and in front of us?" And I had to confess that, yeah, it's not good. And we began to walk that path of divorce in the church, which was just awful and terrible and messy. And I'm glad that you walked that path with me, but it was messy. And it's great to have not only a pastor, but to also have a friend who can walk those paths with you, pray with you, talk you through it. But ultimately, in the church, which is just one of the worst places to get a divorce, for all practical purposes, it just is. Because, you're looked at from so many different viewpoints. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who did this? Who did that? And man, what a mess. I'm grateful you were there for me, but I also feel bad that you had to be there for me. Does that make sense?
It does. But I'll tell you one thing. I don't feel that way. I'm
Sure.
glad. And the crazy thing about everybody's struggles in life, if you're going through it or you're helping someone through it, we all learn lessons from it.
Yeah.
I mean, literally,
Yeah.
to watch you and to see what was happening in your life made me all the more mindful of things that were happening in my own life
Sure.
too, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's scriptural. We're supposed to learn from each other and sharpen each other along the way, even in the midst of the hurt.
It put a magnifying glass on my view of others too. I think growing up in the church and being a part of such great churches, I had a certain view of people who were in divorce or going through divorce, and God had to wreck and shatter all of those mirrors or all of those magnifying glasses that I was looking through. And it began a major, major work in my life, in my own life. Some of the greatest spiritual growth in my entire life. And I got saved young. I was saved at 7. I asked God to sanctify me at 21. And I'm telling you, some of the greatest spiritual growth began to happen in my life through that terrible time. Yeah. And you were part of it. That was the beauty.
Yeah. I think part of it too for me is and that's why I talked about what was on the surface or under the surface, because often we make assumptions about people and where they are that may or may not be true.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I remember that conversation very well, in which I'm like, man, Curtis, I always thought you were the guy that had it all together. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And quite honestly, there's something extremely freeing for everybody listening. There's something freeing about understanding everybody has a struggle.
Yes.
So,
and the sooner we can be raw and real and vulnerable and open, which I had to learn late in life. I can't believe it, but late in life, I had to learn those lessons of what it truly meant to be open and raw and real and vulnerable with people, because it's only then that people truly trust you. I'm finding out now that people will trust you. They'll give you their attention. They'll listen to you because they trust you.
Yeah.
They trust the vulnerability in your life. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning those lessons even now. Yep.
Yeah. So you go through a divorce, regardless of the circumstances. I remember conversations with you where you're trying to figure out what is next for me. How do I move past this? How do I help my kids through this?
Right.
All of those things. And then all of a sudden, and I want to say this to everybody listening, one of the things that never happened with Curtis was, and again, I'll talk surface or under the surface, but from my perspective, I never saw you doubt your relationship with God and all of that. Is that true?
True, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And so there was a constant,
right,
that as bad as it was, there was still hope because I still had Jesus living inside of me,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So things are bad, and then all of a sudden, something out of nowhere happens in your life.
Right.
What is it that happens out of nowhere?
Well, before I talk about that, I think it's good for the audience to know that there were some principles that had to be played out. Number one, I had to determine and tell God that I wasn't going to date. Like, I didn't want to mess this up. And if he had somebody for me, he was literally going to have to drop them in my lap. I mean, that I had that talk with God. And another principle that, I don't know that everybody needs to do this, but I hid for a while. I was on some local boards. I got off. I was on the church board, and I had to get off. I hid for a while. I sought God. I bought a little cabin up in Michigan and just hung out on the weekends and just prayed and walked and sought and read scripture and just really leaned into God for month after month after month during that time period. And so I think it's important for people to know, because I do know people who will jump right into things to either bury or hide or do something with this hurt and hard, because divorce it's especially for a Christian or somebody that's in the church, it's this huge banner that just, you feel like the world sees it, everybody sees it, it's hanging around your neck, you don't know what to do with it. And so I don't think it's good to hide for a long time, but I hid for a while. And I think that time of healing, of leaning into God and making some commitments and promises to him, because I'll be honest, I was lonely. I was tempted. Man, this stinks. You're single. You're, 50 years old and you're single. What are you supposed to do with that? I was an empty nester. My kids had just finished school. One was married, one was engaged, and I'm single, empty nester at home, bachelor, nothing. I mean, just put yourself in those shoes. It was rough, and I had to make some serious commitments to God, and he did. Out of nowhere, he drops this amazing person in my life. And I could spend hours telling you the details of how that worked out, but he did. He literally dropped this person in my life who also, in the church, in the Christian community, in our community, had just gone through a terrible, miserable divorce. And so we had this commonality where we were both hurting. We both were Christians. We both had gone through hard divorces in our community. They were pretty public, messy. And so we had that commonality, but in the middle of it all, she was faithful. She was a believer. She trusted God with her future. I was trusting God with my future. And so we began this journey of healing together. And the Lord gave me Michael. And I'll never forget the time I called you and said, "You're not going to believe it." And you were like, "I know her." I was like, "That's amazing," because I didn't know who she was from Adam. I didn't know who she was, but somehow she had tons of connective friends that you and I both knew, and you know who she was, and others knew her. And so I'm asking, what do you know about her? And, is she this or is she that? And everybody's like, she's amazing. Like, you couldn't have picked somebody better than her. And so we started this journey of vetting each other and getting to know each other, but most importantly, of trying to heal through both going through such hard and messy and nasty divorces. But again, I grew a lot through divorce, but God gave me a person who pushed me and challenged me, and I had another growth spurt. The months that her and I dated, we grew by leaps and bounds in the Word, in prayer. We'd stay up late every night vetting each other, talking, and then we'd have these amazing prayer times, just begging God to heal our hearts, to give us a Beauty for Ashes story. And he did. Week after week, we would do that, and then it was like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna get married. I couldn't wait to go buy a ring. We started vetting each other in January of 2020, and then by February, we're like, okay, we're dating. By May, I'm engaged. I give this woman a ring, like we're doing this thing. And then come June, we decided that, maybe we had to wait a year for the kids to get through another year of school. And then it was like, that's too long. We can't wait a year. And then it was like, well, let's get married in December because, maybe we can get the kids through half a year of school. And then I was like, forget that. Like, I want to get married. And so I'll never forget in June, I said, "Hey, do you love me?" And she's like, "Yeah." I said, "Do you believe that God put us together?" "Yes." I said, "Let's get married." And 3 days before school started in August, we got married. And you were there. Yeah. You counseled us. You saw the joy. You saw what God was doing in our lives. And you got a chance during COVID. We had a COVID ceremony, and it was a blast. And you were there, and our families were there, and you were able to be a part of that blessing and that joy. It was it was a moment. It was good.
So, the interesting thing for me was I counseled you through the divorce.
Yeah.
Right? Marital counseling. I counseled you premarital counseling.
Yeah.
With Michael. And I just want to stop, and I want everybody to know, everybody listening, who you marry matters.
Yeah.
It matters. It's not an accusation on anyone, but it is the understanding that the two really do become one scripturally.
Yeah.
And both have got to be on the same page, pulling the same direction. And to watch the countenance from the tragedy of the divorce to the moment of triumph with Michael, and to see the change that happened inside of you as an outsider looking in, it was awesome. It was awesome to see that demeanor change in you, and to see dreaming result in your life? Because Curtis, you've always been a dreamer. Like you've always been a guy that can see something that doesn't exist through your faith in God and trust God's going to help us get there and connect the dots. You're a good organizer that way in seeing what God could do. And quite honestly, you don't even know this, but you have challenged me so many times in my walk with God. I remember a board meeting where you were just adamant. And you said, if we say no to this, we can see where God is not going to honor our decision. But if we'll say yes and believe that God can do it, God can do even more than this. And we've just got to trust. And you challenged me to not throw in the towel in a moment when I wanted to throw in the towel in ministry and striving to lead people to Jesus Christ. So I've always admired that about you. And what was a great thing for me was to actually see that come to fruition, to actually see God give you the benefit of your faith in Michael. It was awesome to see that firsthand. So you guys get married. I'm telling you, there was excitement in that wedding. Every moment was there to honor God. Every moment was to honor the union of two families that had both been through some form of tragedy.
Yes.
That were saying, in Christ and in Christ alone there is triumph, and we want to honor what God can do in our lives. And so it was a beautiful wedding, beautiful. The wedding happens, and all of a sudden life just blows up, doesn't it? I mean, for you,
we didn't.
I mean, as far as like excitement, like you've got kids, you're running everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Michael had how many kids?
5 kids. We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah.
So when I started dating Michael, I had all these friends of mine who are 50 years old and older saying, "What are you doing? Did you not see that she has 5 kids? Like, dude, your life is good. Your kids are out of the house. You're a bachelor. You're single. What is wrong with you?" I can't tell you how many times that conversation happened, or a picture of us went online and on Facebook, and somebody would be like, "Did you not see the 5 kids?" And so, yeah, my kids they're out of the house, and one of them's married, one's getting married. And at the time, her kids were 15 to 5, 5 of them. And so I had a lot of conversations with her. I had conversations with friends about, what could that look like? What do stepkids look like? And of course, they would tell me the worst and the most horrible stories ever. And I can tell everybody they're amazing. Yeah. From the first day I ever met them. They're amazing kids. And the union, the marriage, the moving under one roof, it was a lot of work, but honestly, I needed it. It was a blessing. I got to be a part of some amazing kids' lives. And to this day, I'm fully engaged, fully part of parenting these kids and helping these kids. But yeah, so there's 5 kids. We fix up an old building that I had uptown and we get married in it. And then it becomes a wedding venue. And next thing I know, the first year of our marriage, we're doing a business together. And so we're raising 5 kids. We're starting a business together. I already have my work and my businesses. So when you say life happened, life exploded. Yeah. And I go from hiding and staying in the shadows to fully engaged in the community. The community loves Michael. They love what we're doing with this wedding venue uptown. She begins to blossom. She begins to dream. And I get to encourage and help her and watch this woman literally come out of her own shell. And it was a blessing in every direction. We were loving life. And it wasn't that it wasn't work. It wasn't that it wasn't hard. It wasn't that it wasn't a lot of time, but we were doing it together. And for the first time ever, I had a best friend and we were doing life together. And it was amazing. I mean, it just was. I don't know how else to describe it. We had spent so many hours, sitting at a kitchen table with a coffee mug, just pouring into each other and loving each other and getting to know each other. And I can tell you honestly, the day after marriage, it never stopped. We never stopped pouring into each other, loving each other, dreaming together, working together. I mean, we're talking about, tons of texts every day, 10 or 12 phone calls every day, and still having time at night to talk and to share about our day and to dream together and talk about the kids and their future and what we wanted to do. Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome.
You literally felt like you had a partner in ministry, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, someone who was as passionate about following after the heart of God as you were, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, those years, those 2 years specifically, you got to experience something. Is it, you can tell me if I have no right to ask this.
Oh, it's okay.
And we'll edit it out.
Okay.
But, is it fair to say that in those 2 years, Curtis, you got to experience the marriage you'd always wanted?
Yeah. Yeah. Loving God together, following God together, dreaming together, working together. I mean, I know that not everybody can work together. I get that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're the best Christian on the planet.
Sure.
It doesn't always work that way, but we loved spending time together.
Yeah.
We couldn't spend enough time together.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you and Michael, were living, both of you living the result of your faith.
Yes.
God had brought you together.
Yeah.
Side question I've never asked you. Did the two of you ever fight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She was
Okay.
feisty.
All right. Good
Oh
deal.
yeah. No, she
Good deal.
she would put me in my place. No, it was because it was we were moving so fast and doing life so quickly and so deeply that you can vet each other as much as you want, but you're still not going to catch every quirk, everything. And I'm not the best communicator, so I might say something and know exactly what I meant, and she wouldn't take it the way I meant at all because she hadn't spent enough time with me.
Yeah.
And so she'd come back to me a day later and she'd say, I'm mad at you. And I'm like, for what? What did I do? And well, you said this. And I'll say, oh, honey, like, I didn't mean that at all. I meant it like this. And she says, I've been mad at you for a day over that. And I said, all you got to do is just bring it up and say it. Like, let's deal with these things. And so once we learned how to fight, per se, like how to deal with these things, we would deal with them quickly.
Yeah.
And we just got, but again, this is such a short marriage. Like we're learning things so fast in such a fast-paced world of raising a bunch of kids, doing work together, business together, that we were still learning each other. We felt like we had 25 years to catch up in a year.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we were learning quirks and all kinds of things quickly.
So you had a marriage that was a struggle and got into a marriage that was blissful by
Yes.
all practical
Yes.
purposes. Some of our listeners are in the midst. They're in a bad marriage right now.
Sure.
Or they've just gotten divorced, or their spouse has lowered information that's
Sure.
wrecked their world.
Right.
And they're separated, or they're moving towards divorce. Some of our listeners maybe came out of a marriage and are now married to somebody else. They've prayed that they feel like God put together.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a lesson you learned, one or 2 points, just real quick. A lesson that you learned about in a new marriage. How do you not hold your new spouse accountable for your old spouse? How do you
wow.
help them?
Yeah.
Give them just a nugget.
Sure.
Something you and Michael both learned. Because
Oh,
I
yeah.
know the reason I'm asking that is I know you guys spend a lot of time
Oh,
talking.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
so give a couple nuggets there that could be.
Yeah,
good.
no, that's a great question because the first thing that happened as soon as I got divorced was a good friend of both of ours, Dr. David Miller,
Yeah.
comes to me and says, hey, I need you to make a list. And I'm like, a list for what? He said, make a list of everything you want in somebody. And I was like, I don't want to. I don't want to date. I'm not interested. And he said, do it anyways. He said, make a list of everything you want and everything you hate, what you never want to see again. He said, because if you write it now, He said it'll be the most raw, real list you've ever made because you did it in the raw of divorce. And so I did it, and it was very pointed. I mean, it was. It laid some things out that I don't even want to tell on the mic.
Sure,
like
sure.
it laid it out. But that was the first step I did. And I would encourage anybody who's starting, I would encourage people who are dating, teenagers, young people, college kids. If you don't have a list, you don't have a clue what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Make a list. And if you don't know what a list is, start in the scripture. Start defining what a husband is. Start defining what a wife is. Go to the scripture. Make a list. And then if you've been divorced and going to be remarried, don't you dare start dating somebody until you have a list. That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing and Michael did this for me, I would say it was more her than me, is when we started vetting each other, there was no question off the table. We turned over every stone. We went into every nook and cranny of our heart and our soul and the deepest, darkest things. Yeah. And I know that for some people, they're like, well, you know what? They don't need to know that. Or maybe that's too hard, or that's going to wreck this. Let me tell you what, we both wrecked each other. Wrecked each other when you go that dark into the darkest places of your soul and reveal and are vulnerable to the point where you can talk and ask about anything. It does two things. It's a make it or break it situation, because you can literally look at each other and say, yeah, I can't do this. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you get to that point and God comes in and just washes it away, and you wake up the next morning and say, God, this was yours to begin with. I can do this because you have brought us together, and I can overcome that thing. And you don't know that you can overcome that thing if you don't know what the thing is.
That's good. That's good advice.
And we did it.
Yeah.
And we did it. It was some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life, was vetting each other to that degree.
Yeah.
It was.
You said something. You said she was your best friend.
Yes.
Because you put the work in. Because
Yes.
you knew each other.
Yes.
Right? And that honesty that you both expressed and shared with each other became actually the bedrock.
Absolutely.
That actually enabled the horrific struggles that were coming for you guys to hold firm together. Is that fair?
Yes.
So talk us through. Things are great.
Yeah.
I remember every conversation with you. It was, life is great. We're doing this. Michael, she's nuts. I mean, those were the, like, and good crazy nuts. Like, I love her.
She had so much energy, and she once she got to dream again and start to do things that she'd always wanted to do, like it was a blast. I could sit back and just literally watch this woman blossom in front of me. It was amazing. You
came to my 50th. You and Michael came to my 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And we had a bunch of people, and we're having a great time together. And the two of you, when I remembered after you left, Tammy and I just said the two of you were larger than life. We were so happy for both of you, seeing the countenance, seeing the way there was playful banter, the way you were both kind of just it just appeared. And the cool thing about this one was I knew it wasn't surface this time.
No, it was not.
It was deep, and it was genuine.
Yeah.
And it was great to see that. I mean, literally, we talked about it after you left, how happy the both of you were. And then it wasn't too long after that.
Yeah.
That your world was rocked again. So tell our listeners what happened.
So we get through our first year anniversary. It's great. We've worked our tails off. We have a really, really busy second year, but the second year was more about really trying to find our groove, how to balance work, how to balance kids, how to balance family, how to balance each other so that we could have quality time together, because we just loved being together. So I'll never forget, we were planning for our second anniversary, August of 19, August of... I'll just forget that. Forget the address. Forget the dates. I'll just move on. I'll never forget that we were planning for our second anniversary, and I told her about Mackinac Island. I told her what an amazing place it was, that there were no cars, there were no motorcycles. It was you walk, you hike, you bike, you ride horses. And she was like, I didn't even know a place like that existed. I said, you're going to love it. And I mean, we had so much fun, and we had set time aside to plan. We had set time aside to dream. We biked, we hiked, and just had the time of our lives. My mom told me, she said, you've worked that woman so hard, you owe her big time. And so she really did. She said, you owe her. And so I booked the Grand Hotel for the whole week. For the whole week, I booked the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island for the whole week, and we'd get dressed up and go to dinner at night. And I mean, it was amazing. Like we had a plan. We had laid out a plan for the next year. We were actually going to homeschool a couple kids. We were going to, do a couple things in the business differently so that we could free up more time to travel. We were planning on going back to Mackinac Island in October. Like, she was all for it. She's like, I'm going to bring the girls. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Like, it was such a good time. While we're there, a couple times we're hiking, we're walking, and she would bend over and say, oh my word, I'm so out of breath. And she said, I don't think I'm that far out of shape, or something's wrong with me. And first couple times I didn't think anything of it, but after a few times of it, I said, babe, something's wrong. Like, we need to get you checked out. And so we got home from that anniversary. She went to the doctor. He thought maybe she had some kind of a virus in her lungs. He said, come back in 2 weeks. We're going to check you out again. Well, we never got to make a second appointment. She began to get short of breath on a regular basis. She started swelling up, and about probably at the next 2 weeks, we ended up in the ER. And we ended up in the ER, and she'd been up all night long. She was starting to swell up. She couldn't keep her breath. And I'll never forget when the doctor came in and said, you guys, Michael's in heart failure. And we're just, what are you talking about? Like, we just had the best honeymoon of our life. We're on cloud nine. We have a plan. And he comes in and says, I don't know what's wrong with her. I don't know why. She's 43 years old. She plays soccer with the kids in the front yard. She walks, she bikes, like, she's in shape. She has more energy than I do. Like, what do you mean? And so over the next, week and a half, there's blood work. There's testing of her heart. She's in and out of the hospital. She has a couple more episodes. They basically are saying that her heart's not pumping the water out of her body, and she's filling up with fluid. So we're trying to do diuretics and things like that to try to get the water out. And it took another week and a half from the time we went into the emergency room. And I'll never forget where we were. Her and I were coming home from Columbus. We were near Canal Winchester, and doctor called and says, hey, what are you doing? I said, I'm driving. He said, I need you to pull over. We need to talk for a minute. And I know right where I pulled off. I pulled off into a little cul-de-sac there in Canal Winchester. And doctor said, Michael, he said, I suspected this a few days ago. I sent the labs up to the James. You have bone marrow cancer, and you have amyloid, which is a rogue protein, and it's attaching itself to all your organs, and it's killing you. And I mean, yeah, we're sitting on the side of the road. We get this news, and of course we have tons of questions, and every question was answered with, this is not good. This is bad. The recovery, the probabilities, all that. And finally, he's a young guy. He's a good doctor. He's a good man, but he's giving us the medical version of the conversation. And finally, I just said, Doc, I said, you're a young guy. You've got a young wife. You've got kids. You got a level set with us. Just tell me. I'm the dad. Like, we're on our way home to go see the kids. Tell me what to do. And he said, Curtis, you need to go home and get your house in order. I remember asking him specifically. I was like, tomorrow, next week? He's like, tonight. You need to go home and get your house in order. we stopped and we prayed on the side of the road. We went home. We brought all the kids into one of the bedrooms, and we all literally laid on the bed and just bawled and cried and tried to explain to the kids. And of course, they have tons of questions we don't have answers for. And I called my kids up and said, "Hey, we need family pictures like this Friday." And they knew. I'd kind of kept them in the loop up to that point. And so they all showed up, and we had family pictures in the lawn on Friday. The very next week, the kids were supposed to get baptized at church. And so all of Michael's family shows up at church, and we have this huge shindig. The kids get baptized. Michael's there. We do family pictures with the family. And at this point now, we've been in conversation with the cancer doctor who's going to treat Michael. He's one of the top amyloid specialists in the country, and he's right here in Columbus, which is awesome. And I mean, things are moving super, super fast. And so we're scheduled for the first chemo treatment on a Monday. I don't have the date in my head. It's end of September, like the 27th or 28th of September. It's a Monday morning. We just had family pictures. We just had time with the family, and she's not in good shape. You can tell that she's not looking good. But we go in for our very first chemo treatment, and she never comes home. She ends up in ICU that night. I didn't know. They told me to go home. I got a call. She texted me in the morning and said, "Hey, not to worry or anything, but I'm in ICU. Apparently my blood pressure dropped, my heart rate dropped." And so I rushed to the hospital. I get in, and she's stable. She's doing okay. They send me home the next night. So this would be Tuesday night. And same thing happens. I go home. I didn't want to go home. She crashes again, and I rush back to the hospital Wednesday morning, and they're basically trying to save my wife's life. The amyloid had attacked her heart. She wasn't getting the fluids out. It started attacking her kidneys. Her kidneys were shutting down, so now the fluid's backing up from both directions. And on Wednesday, they worked like crazy to figure out how to get the water out. They hook her up to a dialysis machine. They have monitors checking her heart. And so by Wednesday afternoon, she's fairly stable. But at that point, family and things are coming in, and we don't know that we have 10 more days. That's all we had. From the day we got the news in the car on the side of the road till the day she died on October 9th was just 4 weeks. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
So you had this great relationship, the bliss. So we're in September. My birthday's in July. We're 2 months removed. Is it?
Yep.
And I remember hearing. I'm on the outside looking in, but I remember hearing the news and just being devastated. Can't imagine what it was like to live through it. I remember a conversation you and I had in an early morning, and you told me everything. How the doctor said, "Look, you've got to get things in order," and still at the same point, I remember us saying both at that moment, "But God's bigger than this even yet, and God can do something here." What I want everybody to realize is that today may be fantastic.
Yeah.
Tomorrow could be catastrophic.
Yep.
But the thing that is absolutely going to give you hope is your relationship with Jesus Christ. It's all you have.
It is all we have.
And God chose not to heal me. Right? This is the thing. Because I remember us saying, "But God can do this."
Yeah.
I know that's what the doctor said, but God could do something here. And it would be such a testimony.
Yeah.
And yet the thing that still gives hope is the fact that God provides. even when it doesn't turn out the way we think it should, even when life doesn't take the turn that we think we're owed, God still provides. He still keeps us even in the midst of turmoil and up and down.
Yeah.
He still provides a baseline, something that we can cling to with all of our hearts. Is
Right.
that right?
It's all we have.
Yeah.
It's all we have.
And in Michael's life, she demonstrated that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
talk about that because everybody, this is the fundamental piece right here.
Right.
Talk about Michael's reaction and response. And
Well, Michael had early on in life lost a child. She had to give birth to a 9-month-old son who died 2 weeks before she was to give birth. So she'd experienced death in a really harsh, hard way. And she had to come to grips with that and really dig deep in her own heart and life to figure out who God was. Because you have to know Michael was such the optimist. She was such the bigger than life character that life was good and God was just going to bless her. And she, as a kid, did all the right things, wore all the right things, said all the right things, honored her parents, she was the model kid. And just thought that life was all about God's going to bless me. He's going to give me a great marriage. He's going to give me great kids. I'm just going to follow him and everything's going to be good. And then she's faced with this awful death of a son. And she wakes up one day and doesn't know who God is.
mm-hmm.
She's like, God, how could you let this happen? And she walked me through that process of like discovering who God really was and diving into the Word and understanding that life on this earth is so short. It doesn't matter if it's a child. It doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 80. It doesn't matter that we're all going to die and that there is an eternity that will go on forever and ever and ever. And when she figured out and found God, honestly, for the first time, it changed her. And the way she raised her kids, the way she vetted me, the way she married me, the way she communicated with me was she knew who God was. And she knew that this life, she lost a grandparent, both her grandparents, and she walked with them through those deaths. And so she understood what death was, and she understood who God was. And understanding that death is a part of life, and understanding that the time on this earth is so short, and that the only thing that matters is our relationship with God. Yeah. Like, this is how she talked. I'm talking this way to you because Michael taught me how to talk like this. This is how she talked to her kids. She would say things like, 43 or 83, we're all going to die, kids. Are you ready? Like, it doesn't matter. When she's on her deathbed, she's telling each one of the kids, it's my time, guys. Don't be mad. Don't be mad at God. Don't get bitter over this. It's just my time. She'd say, I had a great life. I got to raise you kids. You guys are wonderful. God's going to take care of you, but it's my time to go. She had this unique perspective, life, death, and relationship with God. And every day in the hospital, she'd say the craziest, profound things. I'll never forget one night she looks at me and says, am I living well? Have I lived well? I'm like, babe, you've lived better than anybody I know. And then she says, am I dying well? Because I want people to say that she died well. Who says that stuff?
Yeah.
Like, who says that? She wrecked that hospital. She wrecked it. Those people didn't know what hit them. I mean,
I was there. I saw the reaction of the nurses and the staff to her, and even you. There was. I just want everybody to know there was something spiritual that was happening in that room, and people were taking notice of how she was living those last moments of her life. They were. Yeah. I've never seen a service where the staff from those intensive care areas say, no, we're going to come to the service and we want to be there to support because of how a person lived those moments in their life. There was something different about her.
Richard's wife, Mrs. Coyen, I didn't know that she knew people in the office at the hospital. And Mrs. Coyen called the office. I don't know if you know this story.
I don't.
She said, "Do you guys know what's going on up at the 11th floor?" And they said to her, "Everybody knows what's going on the 11th floor. That woman is wrecking this place."
Wow. Crazy.
People would go in and think that they were going to encourage her. My mom, she came in and she wanted to come in and love and encourage her. And she walked out sobbing and saying, "Oh my word." Like everybody who walked in there walked out encouraged and blessed. Wow. And I watched that conversation as my mom was saying, "Michael, you're not supposed to go yet. Like, I'm ready. Like, Lord, take me, not you. You got so much life." And Michael looked her in the eye and said, "I get to beat you there. How cool is that?"
Yeah.
Just nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's a difference. That's a difference in the way that we live because, you know, in my life, Kurt, sometimes I've viewed heaven as like the consolation prize.
I know.
You know, but the word says it's the crown jewel.
I know.
I mean, it's not the consolation. It's the end. It's the perfect end.
And she got that.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that came from, but she got it. One night, she was just talking about heaven. This is we're getting close to Sunday, and it's 1 or 2 days before she passed, and it's late at night, and she's just talking about, "I can't wait to hear the music. I can't wait to hear the angels. I hope I get to sing in the choir." And she's just going on and on and on. And then she looks at me and she says, "Hey," she says, "I'm going to heaven." I said, "I know." I said, "I want to go too." And she said, "No, you can't. You can't go yet. There's too many people counting on you." But she said, "You know what though?" She said, "Time's not the same in heaven." Mm-hmm. I said, "Yeah, what do you mean?" She says, "I'm going to get there and turn around and you're going to be there."
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. It's not far off. It's not Neverland. It's not, you know, it's not this pipe dream. It's a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got to watch somebody enter heaven with a joy and a smile and a love and an appreciation for what she had here, but in an anticipation. There was not fear. There was not drudgery. There was not, I'm sad that I'm going to leave you guys, but I'm going to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it really embodies, doesn't it, what Jesus said when he said, "I don't want you to grieve like those who have no hope."
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We're supposed to pull the plug. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours of all the things that happened in the hospital, but we're supposed to pull the plug on Saturday morning because the doctors have basically said, "There's nothing we can do, Michael. I'm sorry. When do you want us to do this?" And she got to choose when we were going to unplug the machines. And so Friday afternoon would have been the 7th because she didn't actually pass away until Sunday morning, the 9th. Nobody was in the room. I don't know how and I don't know why, but I just had this moment of clarity. And I said, "Hey, babe, how would you like to leave a message for the world?" And she looked at me and thought for a second. And then she says, "You know what?" She was really weak at this point. Her voice was pretty rough. And she said, "I think I would." And I said, "Okay, I'll hold the phone. I'll turn it on, turn it off. And you just tell the world what you want them to know." Oh. And Wendell, I don't remember a word she said. I was just kind of hitting start and stop as we went. And in fact, I couldn't even go back and listen to them. Like weeks later, I just couldn't. I couldn't listen to them. And so I had a friend actually translate them and put them all into text. And I had them, and I've only read them a couple times over the first year. But then recently, in the last 6 months or so, I've spent some time going through them, and I want to read you.
Yeah.
This is a couple paragraphs. It's a long document, but this is just a couple paragraphs of what she said the day before we're going to turn the machines off. To help you understand the clarity, the conscience, and the understanding of who God was and who we are and what our role in this world is. This is the last couple paragraphs of the whole document. It says, "My prayer through many tragedies has been, Lord, keep my heart and my children's heart, Curtis's heart, soft towards you and to others. I've also encouraged my children to run to the pain and run to the hard things, because that's where God will meet you. That's where he'll show himself strong and real to you. And that's where he's going to bring healing like only he can." She said, "Don't cover it. Don't run away from it, but feel it." Sounds like a woman, right? But feel it. She said, "But feel it and let God do its work in you. And then the next time that you have a friend who's going through hard, you can run right into it with them and help them heal in the middle of their pain." And I think that's what some of this is all about. Jesus didn't run from the pain. He ran to it for us. "For great love," he said, "not my will, but yours be done, Lord." I think he's the perfect example, and I think that's what life is all about. Great love and great pain, and the love of the Father covering it all. He said he goes to prepare a place for us with no more sickness, no more sadness, no more death. I just need to stop. This is my wife on her deathbed. This is her words on her deathbed. It's crazy.
Crazy.
He says he goes to prepare a place for us with no more sickness, no more sadness, no more death. Lord willing, I'll be there very, very soon. I can't wait to meet my Savior. So this is not goodbye. This is just see you there. This is not a sadness for anyone who is a child of God. But the hope of a homecoming that's been long awaited. And if you don't know this precious Savior, please run to him in your pain. Find healing and hope and redemption, because he's the only one who can, and that's why he came. I love you all. This world is not our home, and I'll see you soon.
Wow.
That was my wife. That's who God gave me, was that woman. Yeah.
Do you think about those words?
Oh, man, I do now.
Yeah, now that you have them.
They were hard because all they did is represent death and anguish and hurt and hard for the first year. I struggled with them. But now, man, they're words to live by. She gave us this roadmap. Yeah.
So in her dying wish, she didn't want you running away from this moment. She wanted you running towards it.
Yeah.
To embrace it as hard and as difficult as it is, as it's been, to run towards it.
Yep.
And embrace it, because she said that's where God is.
Yep.
Jesus covers it all.
Yep.
How have you seen Jesus covering you in all of this?
Oh, man.
You got the woman you'd always dreamed of.
Yep.
You lose her 2 years later, right?
Yep.
How is staying in this moment? How is God provided for you?
Well, a friend of mine said to me recently, Michael's in heaven because there's things going on here that only she could talk God into doing.
I like that. I like that.
That's true. So remember, I've got 5 kids that aren't mine. And not only did I have to have a funeral, but I had to watch 5 kids walk out of my life and not know if I'd ever see them again.
Yeah.
Man, that was hard. I went home to an empty house. Hard. And
Kids that you had grown to love, too.
Oh, man.
And love to this day. I mean, you had fallen in love with those kids.
Yes. And God's been working that out.
Yeah.
In a big way, he's been working that out. During the vetting process, Michael taught me how to run into really, really hard places. She made me face some of my own dark places in losing a father at a young age, the dad walking out on us at a young age. She made me face those things. She made me face, because she wanted to know what kind of a husband I was going to be, what kind of a father I was going to be. She helped me run into really hard places and watch God not only heal me, but heal her and heal both of us in some of our darkest and hardest moments. And so she'd already been practicing this on me and then teaching her kids. And I watched her walk into so many women's, in 2 years' time, I can tell you of a dozen stories where I watched her walk into other people's hard stories and pray for them and help them and guide them, and people you would never know about, because it wasn't about her showing the world that she loved people. It was about her just being there for people in really hard places. I watched her do that. She modeled from the day I met her how to run into other people's hard because she had been there and she knew it. So it was a formula that she had already done. She lost a child and ran to God, and God met her in her darkest, worst moment and helped her heal and grow and become strong in the faith. And then she realized that she could do that for others. And then she realized as her last wish, in fact, before she recorded that for me, she'd said something in the hospital and I wrote it down. She actually used the words. I can't remember if she was talking directly to me or to one of the kids, but she said, "Run to the hard, run to the hurt, for it's in the greatest hard that God wants to do his greatest work." And I remember writing it down because I'd never heard her say it that way. And it so impacted me that I put it on her headstone. It's on her headstone. Yeah. And so by the time we get to this recording, she basically regurgitates it in a different way, but says the same thing. You know, run into the hard places of your life and let God work with you, heal you, and help you so that you in turn can turn and do the same thing for somebody else. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was her life mantra. It's how she operated. So she was just regurgitating to me, to the rest of the world, like, if you guys will follow this formula of life, God will do big things.
You know, this thought just occurred to me, Curtis, and I've never thought of it this way, and I'm sure you have, because you're a lot smarter than I am, man. Michael ran to the hard. She said that it would have an impact, right? Great impact. Her running to the hard and not shying away from that moment in her faith is still today having an impact.
Yes.
She's not on earth.
Yeah.
But her faith, even in this moment as you share this story, her faith is having an impact.
Yep.
It's bigger than her. It's bigger than that hospital room.
Yep.
It's bigger than a lost child. It's bigger than a failed divorce. Her life is having an impact. She is still reaching the world. She's still making a difference.
I know. Which is the hardest prayer in the world to pray, Lord, your will be done and not mine, because what do you want to do with this?
Yeah.
Man, that's hard.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. I remember the prayer of John Wesley where he said, you know, let me be used for you or set aside for you. Let me have everything or let me have nothing.
Yeah.
What an amazing prayer.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That God would use her life was her prayer. It's what she wanted. She believed God would do great things. And I guess I'm just saying that is what's happening. It's happening through her life as you share her story. You know, I always marvel too at like Abraham, when God called Abraham when he was Abram.
Yep.
And before he renamed him, right? And he said, I just want you to follow me, drop everything and go on this journey. And then you go to the book of Hebrews, and Abraham never got to see. He never got to see the result of his faith, right? But we're having a conversation about faith in Christ today and what that can do in someone's life, because Abraham,
Right.
long before, just said yes to God.
Right.
Right? It created the opportunity today for us to have this conversation. And so Michael's yes, not shying away from the moment, still impacting everybody listening. You've got a yes moment.
Yeah.
You got a moment that you can that God can help you rise above, or you can run away from. But the message today is to run towards it.
Yep.
You don't know how it's going to end up. You don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. You don't know how God's going to connect all the dots. But God is doing something in your life that you don't recognize, and that something that he's doing is going to impact everybody else. It's not just for you.
Right.
It's for everybody else.
Because if it was for me, I'd be selfish.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you'd have chosen the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who wouldn't? Yeah. Huh. So you're learning in these days, what does it mean to honor someone of great faith?
Right.
And how can their story impact others?
In the hospital, I started writing. I did it out of fear of not wanting to forget my wife or her story. And so also, Michael had kind of a social media following because of a previous business that she had built. And so I wrote a lot just to keep people in the loop of what was happening. And then after she passed, I just never stopped. I kept writing about her. I kept writing her nuggets, her story, our love story, what God had done. And I didn't know who was listening. I didn't know who was watching. I didn't know. Honestly, I didn't care.
Sure.
I was just regurgitating my love for a woman and her love for God and the story of us. That's all I was doing. But a couple of my former students come to me, I don't know how many months ago, 5-6 months ago. And they're like, Curtis, we need to tell your story. And I'm like, what does that even mean? They said, we've read your stuff. You need to tell Michael's story on a bigger platform. And he said, we could do a podcast. I'm like, I don't want to do a podcast. I said, it's hard enough to just do what I'm doing. I'm just trying to get through life. And God used these guys, used Chris, his wife. I got to go visit them, and his wife just asked me so many great questions. She said, I love Michael. I love her story. You need to do this. And, somebody's wife has a lot of impact when they start telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing. And I reluctantly agreed to sit down and record a couple podcasts. And I hated it. I hated them. I didn't like doing it. But the Lord has given us this thing. It's runtothehard.com. It's a platform in which I get to talk about my wife. I get to tell her story. And that part I like. I get to talk about my wife.
Yeah.
And share who she was and how she impacted this guy, how she impacted these children. And it's become a thing, and people have been listening, and I hate listening to myself. I don't like it. Yeah. I know you've been doing this a while, and I just, but
I like listening to myself more than I like watching myself, tell you that much.
what's happened though is it's resonated with people who have lost recent spouses, kids, loved ones, parents, and I hope it's helping. I hope it's encouraging. It has become a ministry that I'm trying to wrap my head around. You know, you and I have had lots of conversations about it, and I still don't necessarily have a plan, but I'm having to trust God for it and with it, and realizing that through this mechanism of podcasting or social media, that my wife can still have impact. She can still share her message. She can still help people run into their own heart. She can teach people how to help other people run to their heart and to help them find God in the most miraculous way ever. I surprised myself the other day. I was actually talking on our podcast about the fact that if you look at all of our favorite Bible characters, Joseph, David, and what God allowed them to go through, because God allowed them to go through horrific things. Joseph, year after year after year, tragedy, hard, just story after story after story. And then it dawned on me in this moment of clarity that the harder the things that God allows us to go through, the bigger the task he has for us.
Yeah.
It's proven. It's in the Word.
It is. Yeah.
And so I don't know what to do with that except to say that we're all going to go through hard things. And every one of us are going to come to this fork in the road where you're going to run and you're going to hide and you're going to get away from the hard things of life, or you're going to go dive and go right into them. And you're going to allow God to use them. You're going to allow God to help. He's going to heal you. He's going to do things in your life that you never thought possible. Yeah.
And you're living that. That's what's happening.
That's what's happening.
Yeah. And I want to encourage our listeners, you have got to check out the podcast, Run to the Hard. You can go to runtothehard.com as well. And there's a foundation you've started because people in grief, you and I were talking over lunch today how people don't plan for the unexpected. They don't plan for the moment when someone's not there. And so I know as a pastor, just the moments that I've had where I've tried to ask people to help us scrape the money together to bury someone, to help a family that was in need. And I know that your foundation is striving to actually take care of the widow or the widower who doesn't have the funds to take care of their spouse. And you can find that information on runtothehard.com if you'd like to participate in that. And I know that would be welcomed, right?
Yes.
I was, as we kind of conclude today, I was praying for you today, and out of my deep love for you as a man of God, as a guy that's challenged me, that's been there for me as a person. And this exact scripture is what I thought of when I prayed for you. You probably know it as soon as I start reading it, but I love it. It's 1 Corinthians 16:13. And I want you to know that this is what I see in you. It's Paul, he says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like a man, and be strong. As I prayed today for you, that's the verse that God called to mind about your life. And I want you to know, and I want everybody to know, Michael was a fantastic individual. But God knew what he was doing when he put Curtis and Michael together. Because you've been a fantastic individual in your own right in your life.
Thank you.
And I have no doubt the Lord is going to continue to use you to change lives, that Michael's story through you is going to continue to change lives, and that you're going to be strong and that you're going to be watchful and you're going to stand firm in the faith. So as a guy who's seen it all, the ups and the downs, I just want to say thanks for being you, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And thanks to everybody who's listening. You got to go to Run to the Hard and listen. That podcast is going to rock your world. If you know anybody that is going through grief or struggle in their life, they're going to find encouragement. They're going to find hope for their soul, and they're going to see what God truly can do, even in the midst of difficulty. So, Curtis, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, man. I love you, and
I love you too, man.
I'm so glad we got to do this today.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.